There's something about carrying a secret that changes the way you move through a room. Not always in ways people notice. Sometimes it's just quieter than that. A small shift in how you hold yourself. The way you laugh a little too easily at something that isn't quite funny. The way you get very still when a certain topic comes up. You know that feeling? When something lives so deep inside you that you've stopped being sure where it ends and you begin? Some people are carrying things that are heavy in ways that have names. Things with weight you can almost measure. And some people are carrying things that are harder to explain. Wants and fears and choices that haven't been made yet. And truths that would change everything the moment they were spoken out loud. This is the place for all of it. The named things and the nameless ones. So, pull up a chair. Get comfortable. We can begin. A confession. Sighs softly. I don't even know where to start with this one. Okay, here's where I start. I'm in my car. It's a Sunday in February, which in Cleveland means the sky is the color of old dishwater, and everyone looks slightly defeated by 10 a.m. I'm driving to my sister's house with a bag of groceries in the back seat. She'd texted me the night before, something casual. And I remember thinking, driving through those gray streets, that this was going to be a good day. I genuinely thought that. I had a good playlist going. I'd gotten the good bagels, not the ones from the gas station. I was in a decent mood for a person who owns one plant and talks to it more than most humans. That's the thing about the moments right before everything shifts. They're always so ordinary. You're just driving. You're just singing along to something. You have no idea. My sister's name is Renata. She's 4 years older than me, which she will remind you of approximately twice per visit. Not meanly, just, it's there. It's always been there. She's the one who had the plan. Went to school for education, married her college boyfriend, bought a house in a suburb that has a pottery barn and a farmer's market and a neighborhood Facebook group where people post about coyote sightings like it's breaking news. I love her. I want to say that clearly, right now, before anything else. I love her the way you love someone who has known every version of you, including the versions you'd rather forget. She was the one who drove me home from a party junior year without asking a single question. She was the one who sat on the floor of my apartment when I was 24, and everything was falling apart, and just stayed. Didn't fix anything. Just stayed. We are close in the way that makes conflict feel like a betrayal. That's important. Her house is a particular kind of warm, the kind that's been curated carefully, not in a cold way in a way. There are framed photos on the staircase wall. Milo's drawings are hung on the refrigerator with little wooden clips, not just magnets. The kitchen always smells like whatever she baked the day before, and there's always a candle going, something like cedar or clean linen. Renata runs a tight ship, not unkindly, but with intention. Her son Milo is 6, and he has a schedule, even on Sundays. Breakfast at 8:30, outside time before noon, a quiet hour after lunch where he reads or does puzzles. Screen time is 30 minutes and it's earned, not assumed. She's thought about all of it, every piece. Her husband Derek is easy and warm and mostly stays out of the way during the parts of my visits that get complicated. He's a good man. He makes excellent coffee, and he always finds something to do in the garage when the conversation starts to have a certain texture. I noticed early on that I was one of the things that gave the conversation that texture. Here's who I am in case it matters, and I think it does. I'm the younger one. I'm the one who came out at 22 and spent the following years sort of slowly, deliberately becoming more myself in ways that were visible. Not loud about it. Just present. I dress how I want to dress. I've got a few tattoos, nothing dramatic. I paint my nails sometimes, have for years. On my hands, usually something dark or interesting. Right now, at the time this happened, it was a deep forest green. I wear jewelry that doesn't match in any conventional way. I'm not making a statement when I walk into a room. I'm just walking in. Renata has never said anything directly about any of this. Which, if you know anything about the things that go unsaid between sisters, is its own kind of statement. So I get there. Sunday morning. I'm carrying the bagels and she opens the door before I even knock because Milo must have seen my car from the window, and he comes barreling past her in his socks and throws himself at me like I'm a trampoline. He's the best. He has these enormous brown eyes and he laughs at things with his whole body. He's been into dinosaurs for 8 months straight, and the week before, he'd apparently told his teacher that the Brachiosaurus was emotionally misunderstood, which is the most 6-year-old sentence I've ever heard in my life. I scoop him up. He grabs my hand to drag me inside and stops. He looks at my nails. "Why are your nails green?" he asks. And it's not a judgmental question. He's 6. He's just the way 6-year-olds are curious about everything with equal intensity. The way they'll ask why the sky is blue and why does that dog look sad and why are your nails green all in the same breath. "Because I like green," I tell him. "What's your favorite color right now?" "Orange," he says very seriously. "But I also like purple." "Purple's a great call," I say. And that was it. That was the whole exchange. It was nothing. It was 30 seconds. Except, I catch Renata's face. Long pause. It's not a dramatic expression. It's not a gasp or a frown or anything you could point to and say. It's more like a flicker. Something behind her eyes that she pulls back quickly, like she hadn't meant for me to see it. She smiles. She takes the bagels. She says, "Come in, it's freezing," and we go inside. But I saw it. I've been her sister for 30 years. I saw it. We eat. It's fine. It's good, actually. Milo tells us a very long story about something that happened at school involving a broken crayon and what sounds like a minor political crisis in the first-grade classroom. And we're both laughing. And Derek's making coffee. And for a while I let myself believe I imagined the flicker. Then Milo goes to do his outside time, and Derek goes to do whatever Derek does in the garage, and it's just the two of us at the kitchen table with our coffee and the quiet. Renata wraps both hands around her mug, doesn't look at me. "He's going to ask me to paint his nails now," she says. And there it is. Not angry, not accusatory, just stated, like a fact, like weather. I looked at her. Would that be terrible? She finally looked up. I'd rather he not right now. He's 6. I don't want him going to school with painted nails and dealing with whatever that brings. You know that feeling when someone says something and you hear two things at once? The thing they're saying, and then the thing underneath it. The real thing. The thing that's been sitting there for a while, just waiting for a moment like this to surface? That's what that was. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment, because it wasn't just one thing. There was a flash of something defensive, and underneath that, something quieter, sadder. Something that recognized the shape of this. Because it wasn't really about Milo's nails. It wasn't even really about my nails. It was about the version of me that Renata is still, on some level, trying to figure out how to explain. To her son, to her neighbors, to herself. I put my mug down. "Renata." I stopped, started again. He asked me a question. I answered it. I'm not trying to undo anything you're doing with him." "I know that," she said, and she meant it, I think. But then, "It's just that you're a big deal to him. Whatever you do, he wants to do. And I'm the one who has to manage the fallout." That word. I sat with that word for a second. "What fallout?" I asked, and my voice came out quieter than I intended. "What fallout are you actually afraid of?" She didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at Milo in the backyard, running in some kind of elaborate solo game involving a stick and what appeared to be an imaginary opponent. "I just want things to be simple for him," she finally said. "For a little while longer." Quiet laugh. It's almost funny, except it isn't. Because I understand that. I do. I understand wanting to protect him from the parts of the world that are unkind, from the moments on the playground that leave marks. I understand that she's his mother, and she knows him in ways I don't. In the deep daily way of someone who is there every morning, every hard night, every small crisis. And also, I thought about being 11 years old and hiding things. About learning very early that certain parts of me were going to require management, explanation, apology. About how long it took me to stop doing that. About the specific, particular exhaustion of being someone who has to make themselves smaller so that other people can be comfortable. I wasn't going to say all of that at the kitchen table on a Sunday in February. But I thought it. I didn't leave angry. I want to be clear about that. I hugged Milo before I went, and he told me I should come back because he wanted to show me something about the Triceratops, and I told him I absolutely would. I hugged Renata. It was a real hug. Slightly longer than usual, the way hugs get when something's been said and neither person knows quite what to do with it yet. I drove home with the playlist off. Just the gray road and the gray sky and my own hands on the wheel, nails still green. The days after were the particular kind of uncomfortable where you're not fighting, but you're also not fighting. She texted me that Tuesday. Something normal. A meme about something we both like. Her way of saying I responded. We were okay. We are okay. But I wrote about 4 different versions of a longer text. The kind where you try to say the real thing. I never sent any of them. Not because I don't have things to say. Because I'm still trying to figure out how to say them in a way that she can actually hear. And I'm not sure I know how to do that yet. I'm not sure either of us does. I've been thinking about Milo, though. A lot. I've been thinking about the fact that he looked at my nails and didn't see anything complicated. He saw green. He told me his favorite color was orange, but he also liked purple. He moved on immediately to the next thing, because he's 6, and the world is enormous, and everything is interesting, and none of it is yet organized into the categories we hand children as they get older, the ones that tell them which things are for them and which things aren't. He doesn't know yet. And Renata is the one who gets to decide largely what he learns. That's her right. That's the job. I know that. I just keep wondering. And this is the part I don't have an answer to. I want to be upfront about that. I'm not standing here with an answer. I keep wondering if there's a version of protecting him that accidentally teaches him to be a little afraid. Of difference. Of questions. Of people who look slightly unexpected. Of people like me. Long pause. I'm going back next Sunday. I'm bringing the good bagels again. Milo's going to show me something about the Triceratops. Derek is going to make excellent coffee and find something to do in the garage. Renata and I are going to sit across from each other and love each other in the complicated way we always have, which is to say, imperfectly, with history, with the specific tenderness of 2 people who have known each other too long to be strangers and too well to be simple. My nails are still green. I haven't decided yet if I'll repaint them before I go. Blah. I think about that more than I probably should. I keep coming back to something she said. Not the big thing, not the argument, not the ultimatum. Just that one small moment where she looked at her own arm. I could tell she was seeing it through their eyes for a second. Just a second. And then she came back to herself. That's the thing about the stuff people can see on you. It gives them something to react to. Something to push against. There's a kind of strange mercy in that, actually. The fight is loud, but at least it's out there. At least it exists in a room somewhere. I think about the other kind. The thing a person holds so far inside that there's no surface for anyone to find. No argument to have. Just a person. Moving through their days. Sitting across from the people who love them at dinner. And knowing something that would change everything in that room if they said it out loud. And choosing every single day not to. I don't know if that's lonelier. I think maybe it's just a different shape of alone. Someone is about to tell us something they have never said to another person. I want you to just sit with that for a second before we go in. The folded napkins. The Tuesday it finally settled in, I was standing at the kitchen counter cutting a grapefruit in half. Not because I was hungry. I hadn't been hungry in months. But it was something I could do with my hands at 6 in the morning while the house made its waking up sounds around me. The furnace clicking on, the pipes in the upstairs bathroom humming, the particular creak of the 3rd step on the stairs that I'd been meaning to ask someone to fix for 3 years. I cut the grapefruit. I set out 4 plates. I folded the paper napkins into triangles the way my mother used to, the way I'd done every morning for 22 years in this house. And I waited. Sighs softly. I keep coming back to that Tuesday. The house is a colonial on Dearborn Street. Cream siding, green shutters, a front porch that lists slightly to the left because the post rotted at the base, and we kept saying we'd replace it. Inside, The kitchen has this particular morning light that comes through the window above the sink right around 6:15, and for about 10 minutes it turns everything gold. The tile, the countertops, the little clay pot my daughter Nora made in 4th grade that we still use to hold pens. 10 minutes of gold, and then it passes, and the kitchen goes back to just being a kitchen. I used to point it out. Nobody ever looked anymore. My name is Diane. I am 54 years old. I have a husband named Paul and 2 kids, Nora, who is 26 and moved back home 8 months ago after a breakup, and Callum, who is 23 and never really left. And I have, well, the doctors gave me a number last spring. I stopped saying it out loud sometime around August because every time I did, the kids would go very still in a way that was harder to sit with than the number itself. So I stopped. And then, I think, they stopped thinking about it quite so often. Which is, I understand it. I do. Life has a way of filling back in around the hard things. I understand it completely. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt. My mornings had a shape to them, even after the diagnosis. Especially after, maybe. I'd wake up before everyone else, come downstairs in the gray quiet, make the coffee. I'd take my medications, 7 of them now, lined up in the weekly organizer on the second shelf of the cabinet, the one nobody else ever opened. And I'd swallow them one at a time with a full glass of water the way the doctor said, and then I'd start breakfast. It wasn't about feeding them. Not really. It was about still being the person who fed them. There's a difference. Paul would come down around 7, already in his work clothes, already somewhere else in his head. He'd pour a cup of coffee without looking at the plates I'd set out and take the cup to his office and close the door. Callum would appear around 7:30, eat standing at the counter with his eyes on his phone, scrape the plate into the sink, and disappear back upstairs. Nora was the most reliable. She'd actually sit down, actually say good morning. But she'd also started working remotely for a company in a different time zone, and most mornings she was already on a call before her coffee cooled, one earbud in, nodding at a screen, mouthing at me when I tried to say something. I kept making breakfast anyway. I kept folding the napkins. You know that feeling when you realize you've been waiting for something that already stopped coming? Yeah, it was like that. The dinner, I'd spent most of the afternoon cooking, not because I had the energy for it, which I mostly didn't anymore, but because it was Callum's birthday, and I'd made his birthday dinner every year of his life. A standing rib roast with the rosemary crust and roasted potatoes and the green beans with the almonds that he'd asked for since he was 12. I stood at the stove for 2.5 hours. My back hurt in the specific way it had started hurting, the way that wasn't quite like the old back pain, and I kept shifting my weight from foot to foot and telling myself it was fine, it was fine, it was one dinner. I set the table with the good dishes. I lit candles. I folded the napkins. Paul came home at 6:30 and said, and then went upstairs to change, and I heard him on the phone up there, laughing at something, and he didn't come back down for 40 minutes. Nora appeared from her room around 7, looked at the table, said, and sat down, and immediately started texting. Callum came downstairs at 7:15 with his friend Devin, who I had not known was coming. Callum said, already moving toward the cabinet to get another plate. I said, and I meant it. I did. Devin is a good kid, and I've known him since 4th grade, and I was glad he was there. But there was a moment, a small, specific moment, where Callum was setting Devin's place at the table and rearranging the chairs, and he said, and I went and got it, and I carried it in, and I set it down, and nobody, not one of them, thought to wonder if maybe I shouldn't be carrying chairs. I sat down. I looked at the candles. I felt something move through my chest that wasn't quite sadness and wasn't quite anger. It was something older than both of those things. Something tired. Dinner was fine. Loud. Devin told a long story about a road trip. Paul refilled everyone's wine. Callum laughed with his mouth full the way he'd done since he was 8. Nora stole potatoes off Devin's plate. It was a perfectly good birthday dinner. Nobody asked how I was feeling. Not once. Not in the whole 2 hours we sat there. Laughs a little, not because it's funny. I kept thinking, but you can't ask someone to ask how you are. That's not how it works. That's not what it would mean, even if they did. At some point, Paul looked at me across the candles and said, and I nodded and said thank you, and I could feel the smile sitting on my face like something I'd put on a shelf and forgotten to take down. After, I did the dishes. Callum and Devon went downstairs to watch something. Nora said she'd help clean up and then got a call and took it in her room. Paul loaded the dishwasher. He did do that. I want to be fair. And then said he was exhausted and kissed me on the top of my head and went to bed. By 8:45, the kitchen was quiet. I stood at the sink and finished washing the roasting pan, the one that doesn't fit in the dishwasher, the one I've washed by hand after every holiday meal for 2 decades. The water was too hot and I didn't turn it down. I just stood there with my hands in it, watching the grease come off in slow ribbons. And I think you might know what I mean when I say that being in a room full of people who love you can be the loneliest place there is. When the pan was clean, I dried my hands on the dish towel, the yellow one with the faded sunflowers, the one Nora picked out at a farmer's market when she was 16, and I turned off the kitchen light. I didn't go upstairs. I went to the sunroom at the back of the house, the small one with the wicker furniture and the old floor lamp that buzzes slightly when it's cold. It was cold that night. The lamp buzzed. I sat in the chair I always sit in, the one that faces the backyard, and I looked out at the dark. The yard was just shapes, the oak tree, the fence, the outline of the garden beds I'd put in 10 years ago, which nobody had helped me with and which I hadn't been able to keep up with this fall, so they were ragged and going to seed at the edges. I thought about the number the doctors gave me. I let myself think about it, which I didn't usually do. Pauses. I sat with it for a while. I didn't cry. I think I'd been expecting to cry. That's usually how these moments go, right? In the movies. You have the big quiet breakdown and something shifts. But nothing shifted. I just sat there in the buzzing lamplight and felt the specific weight of being a person who is still here, still cooking and folding napkins and carrying chairs, still performing the motions of a life, while the people in that life have quietly, not cruelly, not intentionally, just quietly, begun to move around her like she's already a piece of furniture. Not a person who is leaving. Just a fixture, familiar, unnoticed. I went to bed around midnight. Paul was asleep. He was on his side, facing away, and I lay down beside him and looked at the ceiling for a long time. The furnace clicked on. The pipes hummed. The house made its nighttime sounds. All the sounds I knew better than I knew anything. And I listened to them, and I thought. I don't know why that helped a little, but it did. In the morning, I got up before everyone. I came downstairs in the gray quiet. I made the coffee. I cut a grapefruit in half, even though I still wasn't hungry. And I folded the napkins, 4 of them, triangles, the way my mother taught me. And I set them at each place. And I stood at the counter in the kitchen on Dearborn Street and waited for the 6:15 light to come through the window above the sink. It came. It turned everything gold for 10 minutes. Then it passed. And I started another day. Some silences don't end, they just shift into a different kind of quiet. There are people who disappear by holding perfectly still. And there are people who disappear by moving. By driving somewhere no one knows their name. By becoming, just for a little while, someone they only let themselves be alone. The next secret doesn't live in loss. It lives in want. In the part of a person that survives everything ordinary life asks them to be. And occasionally quietly refuses. Stay with me. Confessed. There's a gas station on Route 9 that I stopped seeing a long time ago. You know how that happens. A place becomes so familiar it turns invisible. You drive past it every morning, every evening, and somewhere around month 4 of the same commute, your brain just files it away, stops registering it as real. I passed that station twice a day for 6 years, the same hand-painted sign advertising lottery tickets, the same guy, Hector, who always had a coffee in one hand and a phone in the other, never looking up. 6 years. I could have told you the price of regular gas down to the cent without ever consciously reading the sign. That's what my life felt like, if I'm being honest with you. Filed away. My name is Renee, and I want you to understand something before I go any further. I was not an unhappy person. I want to be clear about that because people hear a story like this and they assume the person telling it was miserable, was desperate, was teetering on some edge. I wasn't. I had a good job. administrative coordinator at a regional insurance company called Hallmark Mutual, not the greeting card one, which I had to clarify approximately 4,000 times over 6 years. I had a house that was mine, mostly. A mortgage, technically. A cat named Gerald who was deeply unimpressed with me. I had friends I genuinely liked. A mother who called on Sundays. A standing Thursday dinner reservation at a place called Caruso's where everybody knew to give me the booth by the window. I was fine. And I think that's the thing nobody warns you about. Fine is its own kind of slow suffocation. It doesn't come for you all at once. It seeps in through the cracks. Through the Tuesday afternoons that feel identical to the Wednesday afternoons that feel identical to the Thursday afternoons. Through the way people at work started finishing my sentences. Through the moment you realize you haven't surprised yourself in so long that you can't actually remember the last time you did. I was 34 years old and I was completely, totally, thoroughly in a small town, and Millhaven, Ohio is small enough that my dentist went to high school with my boss. Being known sounds like a gift. People say it like it's a gift. And at first it is. It feels like belonging. But there's a shadow side to belonging. And the shadow side is this. When everyone knows who you are, you become responsible for staying that person. You don't get to be tentative or confused or contradictory. You are the version of yourself that the town has already agreed upon, and the social contract, unspoken, invisible, iron, says that you will show up as that version, reliably, forever. I was reliable Renee. God, I was so tired of being reliable. It started small, the way these things always do. There was a bar called The Anchor, about 40 minutes east on the highway, past the county line, in a town called Sutter that I had exactly 0 connections to. I'd driven past the exit 100 times on my way to my cousin's place in Columbus. One Friday in October, I remember it was October because the trees along Route 9 had just gone full amber, and the sky had that particular late afternoon bruise color that only happens in Ohio in fall. I took the exit. I don't know why. I genuinely cannot give you a cleaner reason than I took the exit. The Anchor was the kind of place that smelled like old wood and something fried, with a jukebox that was half broken, and a bartender named Sal, who had forearms like a longshoreman, and absolutely no interest in learning your name. Which was, I would discover, exactly what I needed. I sat down at the bar. I ordered a beer I'd never ordered before, some local thing on tap that I pointed at without asking what it was, and I just sat there. Nobody looked at me. Nobody asked about my mother or my mortgage or whether I'd heard about what happened with the Delaney family's oldest kid. I was nobody. I was completely, gloriously nobody. I was a woman sitting at a bar on a Friday night, and I could have been anyone. And it felt like taking off a coat I'd been wearing for so long, I'd forgotten it wasn't my skin. I exhale slowly here, because even just describing it, even years later, there's something that opens up in my chest. I went back the next Friday, and the one after that. By December, I had a whole other life out there, in a way that sounds more dramatic than it was. It wasn't dramatic. It was small and private, and mine. I'd started talking to people at the Anchor, really talking, the way you can only talk to strangers, without the weight of history in every sentence. There was a woman named Priya, who was getting her nursing degree at 41, and who laughed so hard at her own jokes that she'd have to put her drink down. There was an older man, Dale, who'd been a long-haul trucker for 30 years, and who had opinions about every state in the country that were so specific and so unhinged that I looked forward to them the way other people look forward to podcasts. And there was a version of me that existed only at the Anchor, a version who said what she thought without calculating how it would land, who tried things, ordered weird food, played a round of pool even though she was terrible at it, once got up and sang a verse of a Patsy Cline song on a dare from Priya, even though her voice is, objectively, not good. Priya said, laughing when I sat back down. I said, and I meant it as a compliment to myself, maybe the first compliment I'd given myself in a long time. I wasn't lying to anyone technically. If my mother called on Sunday and asked about my week, I'd say, which was true. Millhaven was quiet. I just didn't mention the 40-minute drive east, or the broken jukebox, or the fact that I'd been teaching Dale to text because his daughter lived in Portland and he was tired of missing things. I told myself it wasn't deception, it was just compartmentalization. I was very good at telling myself things back then. The night it almost came apart was a Saturday in February. I'd started going on Saturdays too by that point. I was at the Anchor, sitting at what had become, without anyone officially declaring it, my usual spot at the bar. Priya was there. Dale was not. He was on a run to Memphis, he'd texted me. And I laugh a little at that even now, because I'd done that. I'd given a 63-year-old trucker the ability to text. Anyway, I was there, and the door opened. And in walked my coworker Marcus. Marcus from Hallmark Mutual. Marcus who sat 2 desks over from me for 6 years. Marcus who brought his own lunch every single day in a blue insulated bag and who had a photo of his kids on his monitor that he'd been meaning to update since 2019. He didn't see me right away. He was with someone I didn't recognize. A friend, maybe. Someone from his own other life that I knew nothing about. And I had about 4 seconds to make a decision. I turned on my stool. Slowly. Put my back to the door and hunched slightly over my drink in a way that felt absolutely insane, like I was a cartoon character hiding. My heart was going. I mean, it was. I could feel it in my throat, in my fingertips, in the specific way the bar stool suddenly felt very unstable beneath me. Priya looked at me. I said. The word tasted like something I'd been saying my whole life. I sat there for 20 minutes like that, back to the room, not turning around, nursing a beer I didn't want anymore. I heard Marcus laugh, that distinctive big laugh of his, the one that fills up a room, from somewhere behind me. I heard him order something. I heard him and his friend talking about something I couldn't quite make out over the jukebox, which had chosen that moment to actually work, and was playing an old Springsteen song. And then eventually I heard them move, toward a table, I thought, away from the bar. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I paid my tab, said goodbye to Priya, and walked out with my head slightly down, my coat already on, moving like someone who had somewhere else to be. In the car, I sat for a while without starting it. The windows fogged up slowly from my breath. I want to tell you I felt relieved, and I did, a little, but the bigger thing, the thing that sat heavier, was something I didn't have a word for yet. It was the feeling of almost being seen. Not caught, exactly. Almost. And the fact that my first instinct, the one that kicked in before any thought did, was to hide. What does it mean, I sat there thinking, that the version of yourself you like best is the one you have to hide? I drove home on Route 9. I passed the gas station. Hector wasn't there. It was late, and the overnight guy was someone I didn't recognize. The sign was lit up orange against the dark. The price of regular gas was the same as it had been all week. I noticed it. For the first time in years, I actually noticed it. I kept going to the Anchor after that. I want to be honest about that. I didn't have some clean moment of resolution where I either stopped or came clean or integrated my 2 selves into one whole enlightened person. That's not how it went. What happened was messier and slower and more human than that. More human. What happened was, I started asking questions I hadn't let myself ask before. Not out loud, just in the car, in the shower, in the particular silence of a Tuesday afternoon at work when I was supposed to be cross-referencing policy renewals. Questions like, and... I started noticing things. The way I softened my opinions at Thursday dinner at Caruso's. The way I laughed at the right moments and looked interested at the right moments and never, ever said, because disagreeing would have required an explanation, and an explanation would have required a version of me that Millhaven didn't have a category for yet. I'm not saying any of this makes me a victim of anything. I'm not. My town didn't do anything to me that I didn't quietly allow. That's the part that took the longest to look at directly. I allowed it, because belonging felt better than the alternative, until the belonging started to cost more than I'd realized I was paying. Priya finished her nursing degree in May. There was a small celebration at the Anchor, her idea, naturally, and I was there, and so was Dale, who'd driven back from a run in Kentucky specifically for it, which I thought was one of the most purely good things I'd ever seen a person do. Dale said, raising his glass. He's not a man who makes speeches. It was 2 words, and it was enough. I drove home that night on the highway with the windows down even though it was still a little cold, and the air smelled like cut grass and something faintly like rain that hadn't arrived yet. And I thought about the receipt in my jacket pocket, from the anchor, from that night, and how I would take it out of my pocket when I got home and put it in the small wooden box on my dresser where I'd started keeping things. A receipt, a bar coaster, a photo Priya had taken of all of us one night, slightly blurry, slightly dark, all of us laughing at something Dale had said. Evidence, I suppose, that it happened, that I was there, that some version of me existed that didn't need to be explained or approved or filed away. I don't know what I'm building toward. I want to be honest about that too. I haven't figured out how to bring these two versions of myself into the same room yet. I'm not sure they can be. Not completely. Not without something changing. And I don't know what I'm willing to change. And I don't know what I'm not. What I know is this. I still drive past that gas station every morning. I still wave at Hector, who still doesn't look up. I still sit in my booth at Caruso's on Thursdays. I'm still, to most of Millhaven, Ohio, reliable Renee, the one who organizes the holiday party, the one who always brings the right thing to a potluck, the one whose life fits neatly into a sentence. But there's a small wooden box on my dresser. And sometimes, late at night, I open it and look at what's inside and I think, and I don't know yet what to do with that. But I'm starting to think that not knowing, sitting with the not knowing instead of filing it away, might be the most honest thing I've done in years. Just breathe for a second. Yeah? Take a minute with that one. There's something about carrying 3 things at once. 3 whole things, each one heavy enough on its own. It doesn't really have a name. It's not chaos exactly. It's more like you've gotten very good at holding still. At keeping your face doing the right thing while something else entirely is happening underneath it. You know that feeling when someone's talking about you. Not to you, about you, and you're right there in the room. Like you're a topic. A position someone's staking out. And you're standing there thinking, you don't actually know me. You think you do, but you're holding a version of me that's already out of date. Most people have felt that once or twice. But there's a particular kind of loneliness in feeling it from the people who are supposed to know you best. And knowing you can't correct them. Not right now, maybe not ever. And I don't know. Maybe that's the funny part. We spend so much of our lives being legible to other people. Explainable, categorized. And sometimes the most honest thing a person can do is just want to be a stranger for a weekend. No history, no diagnosis. No family mythology following you down the hallway. Just a woman in a hotel room who nobody has a story about yet. That's not running away. That's just being a person who's tired. If something in this one sat close to home. If you've got something you've been carrying in a way that doesn't have anywhere to go, the inbox is open. No name required. No judgment in how it's told. A lot of people who've sent their stories thought they were the only one who'd ever felt exactly that specific thing. They weren't, not once. We don't always get to choose what we're holding, but sometimes we get to choose, just for a little while, who we're holding it as. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything.